Hi guys, I'm Kayla Ruffin, here representing Her Campus, Howard University chapter, and we are back with Her Campus, Her Voice. Today I am here with...
Hi, my name is Madison. I'm a first-year biology major, political science minor from Los Angeles, California. I am currently the Director of Communications and Outreach for Girls Who Lead.
Hi, everybody. So happy to be here. My name is Alexis Corazon Rodriguez. I'm a junior political science and African studies double major from San Francisco, California, and I currently serve as the vice president of Howard's chapter of Girls Who Lead.
Okay, period. And today's episode is called Unapologetically Valuable. So today, ladies, I will just be asking you a few questions, and we're going to get started. Okay, so the first question is, what mindset shifts helped you stop asking for permission and start leading?
That's a good question.
Thank you for that question.
No problem.
I think a huge part of my brand when empowering people to understand how to use their experiences to storytell is by encouraging them to stop waiting for permission to lead. It's something I say all the time, ultimately because a lot of times you're the only person disqualifying yourselves out of rooms before you give anybody else the opportunity to even consider you. A lot of times I've struggled with feelings of inadequacy. I've struggled with feelings of putting conditions on myself. You need to look a certain way before you'll be ready to pursue that opportunity. You need to check off this many boxes on your resume before you could even think about approaching that milestone. And a lot of times it would just set me back, and then I'd be looking at everybody else still moving on with their lives, and I'll just sit and be like, oh my gosh, I missed out.
Yeah.
And so it is nothing more hurtful than to know that the only person holding you back was you.
Listen.
Because especially as Black women, there are already so many barriers. There's already going to be probably a lot of fingers pointing, telling us no. And so the only person that you'll ever have a consistency with, the only person that you'll ever have to continue to push you and encourage you to keep going a lot of the times needs to come from within.
I love that.
Agreed. Can you repeat the question?
Of course. What mindset shifts helped you stop asking for permission and start leading?
Okay, so for me personally, I've always kind of had that mindset to lead or to help others in a way. And I realized from maybe like a couple years into high school that it wasn't just like, oh, I wanted to help others. It was actually to lead others in the right direction. And so kind of that mindset shift once I got here was like, how do I fix that mindset of leading into a more collaborative thing? So like delegating and not taking it all by myself and things of that nature, kind of talking to people and realizing, hey, they can help, or that, you know, we're on the same level and I know that, you know, leading doesn't just take one person. So that mindset shift kind of fixed who I am as a person and kind of healed what I had my leadership standards to be beforehand. And so, yeah.
Yes, I love both of your responses.
Thank you.
I think it's something beautiful when you start like looking at the full scope of things overall. And so I think like a mindset shift that I definitely had was just you got to do it, you know? Like you can't let, you know, the only person at the end of the day that's going to like make you feel that you can't do something is yourself and like your own mind. And I think like when you just do something and people like just do something, people are going to look at you and be like, oh my God, like I need to be not exactly like her, but I need to have that same mindset. Like I just need to do it, you know, because I think it just makes people more like in awe of your bravery sometimes and your confidence, you know? So, okay. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. You made me think of something, and I'm recalling back to my freshman year, even my sophomore year. I, again, was really struggling with those negative perceptions towards myself. And you mentioned perception too. We as a society care too much about what people think about us.
Listen.
And that holds us back in so many different capacities. But specifically to Howard, I could think of all the times as an underclassman that I didn't go to those interest meetings.
Listen.
I didn't go to those weeks. I didn't go to those opportunities because my friends were busy or they had stuff going on and I didn't want to do it alone. And I remember I kind of tried to plan out my goals around my friends so that we'd have the comfort to confide in each other and lean on each other. You cannot operate like that.
Exactly.
I think we really confuse support systems with someone doing the work for us. Just because you're busy doesn't mean I can't get up and go alone. And I think it's super important that we are intentional about surrounding ourselves with people, women, friends, even being intentional with our family about how we expect them to speak life into ourselves. Because, like I said, we can't expect people to do the work for us. But what is important is you surrounding yourself around people who's speaking life into you so that you're able to do it for yourself.
Listen.
When we don't have that, that's when we go looking for validation from anybody and everybody. And that's what keeps holding us back. But it is so important to be intentional about your time, the access that you give to people, because that ultimately shapes who you are in every setting that you walk into and how you feel about yourself. That shapes your character.
Yes. I agree. Like, I think another thing that like people have to start implementing is like boundaries overall. Like having boundaries for like, even like your friends, your family, yourself. It's just overall like I think it'll put you into a different mindset. Like when you start implementing things that like people, you know, like the access that you give to people. Like some people just don't have the right intention, and I think that just like you have to start realizing that boundaries are there for a reason. Like they're there to protect your mental, your emotional, like your overall just like physical in general. So yes, I love these answers, y'all. Oh my God. Okay, let's move on. How do you maintain confidence when you're the only or first Black woman in a space?
Personally, I grew up in a situation where I kind of was the only Black woman in a lot of those rooms, or Black girl in a lot of those rooms even. And kind of my mother just cultivated a space at home that made me realize who I am as a person. Everyone says, like, you can't love others until you love yourself truly. And so keeping that mindset of, okay, I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. And even though they may not think that I'm on the same level when I'm entering that room, when I leave that room, they will know that I'm on that same level, you know, and like the way that I talk, the way that I present myself and things of that nature. I think that it all matters. And specifically like me wanting to lead my classmates from an early age was very hard for me because I was that only person in the room. But then once I realized who I was as a person, what leadership meant to me, I realized it's okay to be that Black person in the room and to speak up, or, you know, to tell them, no, I don't think that this is the right thing to do. You can have an opposing opinion and be okay with that. And so I think kind of like even talking about like being, you know, controversial in your opinions, like if they have an opinion about you specifically and they say that, like I've been in rooms where they're just like, oh, well, your hair's not right. Or,
Like, what's
you
that
know,
have to do with anything?
exactly. So like being in that room and still standing confident in who you are and being like, okay, well, my hair isn't like yours, but that's okay. We're still, you know, similar in the same ways. We still have the same opportunity to be here. Like that mindset.
I really like that. You're making me think of probably my sophomore year at Howard. I was a little ignorant. I'm over here looking. Guys, I completely started to forget how underrepresented we were in leadership spaces because of how much excellence is on this campus.
Listen.
I come from a very diverse city in San Francisco, and coming to Howard, I'm looking at all of these people that got Hilternships, Congressional Black Caucus. I'm seeing all of this amazing Black representation in health in the dental field, and it's all I'm surrounded by. And so I remember my first time interning on the Hill last year. It was a big wake-up call after me kind of conditioning myself where, like, wow, like, there's so many Black people doing amazing things in these spaces. And once I got on that hill, snap out of reality. And I just remember, I remember being nervous about overdoing it. I remember being nervous about small stuff like my nails being too long, wearing a color that's too bright, my hair strands being out of place in certain places. And it's these little things that we condition ourselves to pay extra special attention to. I even think about the way we execute professionalism on this campus and the expectations that we put on ourselves. And I have had so many conversations where we talk about how being a young Black professional, we have to water ourselves down by 1,000% more than the average human, like than a non-Black person, simply because of the fact that we're already perceived differently. And so it could be one little thing that is just, now you're doing too much. And so that's what I think of in those spaces. But I remember receiving advice the first time I was interning on the Hill, and it was like, make sure your hair is conservative, which meant straight. Make sure you're not wearing bright colors. Make sure you're not always the one trying to do the most in the room. And my response to that, I understand why people say that. Be yourself. The most truly, like, astonishing people I've met in their profession are the people who show up as authentically them. The people who speak from the heart, who lead authentically. And that shows up in so many different spaces. And that will get you so much further than anything else. And so while I think conversations about what it means to be a young professional are important, I think it's also equally as important to recognize what parts of yourself are you watering down and sacrificing in the process, and is it worth it? Are you still upholding your values and your morals in the process? Are you still showing your true self?
100%.
I love that.
I do agree. I think that, people who step into rooms intentionally and being themselves while also being professional is 100% what we need more of. I think a lot of the times those are like Black women who are those like uniquely themselves, but also fixing that professionalism in there to make sure that, they don't step over any boundaries and things of that nature. And I think that Howard does a good job of like cultivating that and understanding, the things that you have to wear, or, the way that you have to put your hair and things like that, like you were saying, but also,
Howard conditions us, baby.
Right, for sure. As soon as I got here, I was like, oh, okay.
Hello.
No, but definitely like trying to condition yourself to, wear the right things, do the right things, but also figuring out how to put your personality out there and like stepping into that room and being uniquely you. I think it's harder than we talk about. But,
Okay. I also agree. I think that, like, recently I asked one of my friends, like, how do we go about, I guess, like, in better terms, like, watering ourselves down, like, as Black women when we're trying to be professional in certain settings. And she was basically telling me she doesn't agree with watering personalities down at all. Because, like you guys were saying, like, showing up as your authentic self it's selling a version of yourself that people can trust. And I think that, like, we forget that all the time, that, like, when you show up in spaces, especially as, like, just like a person of color in general, and you're not showing up as yourself, people are they have certain expectations of that version that you sold them. And so now you have to hold yourself to those same expectations. And when you get lost in that, well, what happens? You could lose your position, you could get demoted. You could, you just like negative things happen in my personal opinion. And I agree with y'all both. Like, I think that we need to start, especially since like we show up in certain areas, in certain places as Black women, and like we're the first person in the room. I think we should show up with afros. I think that is who we are. That is our that is our culture. Like, like that's what people see. I think we should show up with the lip combo, with the with the red bottoms, like everything, because I just think that's who we are, Like, I can be professional if that's what you're asking of me, but I'm also going to be my authentic self because that is who you're going to hire and that's who you're going to see every day.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I also think that there's like a form of exhaustion that happens like
Listen,
once you're faking it for so long. So what you're talking about, being not watering yourself down to, be in that position of power is very important. But I also think that not watering yourself down, but also figuring out how to be respectfully you. Because going into spaces and being your full self is amazing, but also realizing you're still a role model for those who are younger than you. You're still a role model for, people who are trying to get in your position. So, like, figuring out how to, if someone's doing something that you genuinely don't like and they're not your same race or they're, like, you're being microaggressed and things like that, figure out how to address it in a way that's not coming off as, angry Black woman type of, there's just, I feel like it's very hard to do. And again, like, it's exhausting to do, but also it's just something that we have to because we are Black women.
Of course.
Yes.
I was thinking about something, and there's a reason that we research and do our due diligence to understand the mission, the values of institutions and organizations that we want to work for and represent. It's because we want them to reflect what we value and what we find is important, right? And so vice versa, when you're not showing up as your authentic self, when you're trying to fit yourself into someone else's bubble to be accepted, they are not going to be, one, understanding the genuine real you, and two, who's to say that if you were showing up as yourself and their response was different, is that someone that you'd want to represent and spend your time around and tether your name to, essentially?
Right.
I can give you an example. I was a teenager working for a nonprofit organization that centered on youth empowerment, especially for at-risk children. So we were hiring for a leadership position with other teenagers at the time, and my supervisor was discriminating against a student who was disabled. And ultimately, the only reason they did not get that position was because of their disability, when everything about their application, resume, materials was far more outstanding than any other candidate. I was a teenager at this time, speaking with someone who was probably 4 times my age. And I remember feeling like I was going crazy for recognizing and identifying that that was wrong. I started to second guess myself, like, are you too young to really be noticing something like this? Are you going to get in trouble for speaking up about this? Am I going to lose my job? And I remember sitting on it that entire summer. And there was one day that we had a team event, and I just broke down and cried because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I could not continue to show up in that workspace knowing that our primary responsibility was to close the opportunity gap to people who experience circumstances that cause them to be disconnected from opportunity. We did not fulfill that mission in that moment. And so for me as a child to really sit back and recognize that and to go a step further to get up and say something about it, it was very difficult for me. But that is literally one exact example of what it means when you are compromising parts of yourself to just fit in someone's bubble.
Yes.
I don't want to represent anyone who is not confident, who is not fully aligned with the things that I advocate for. Because for me to leave this room and they represent XYZ, and to walk into the next room and they're screaming, writing down posters saying something completely different, what does that make me look like?
Right.
And so that's especially why it's so important to show up as your authentic self, because you could be hiding a version of yourself, a character, identity of yours that they probably would never stand behind.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite mentors told me, speak your truth and do it with love. And that's my favorite quote on this earth, because it shows one's ability to be disciplined and self-control, to give feedback from a loving place. And so when people want to give their opinions that aren't centered towards building a better version of you, simply it's coming from malice. It's coming from a malicious intention.
Yes.
And why would I internalize that when we were just talking about a positivity train?
Exactly.
Why would I internalize that? Why would I entertain that? So in my opinion, constructive criticism is coming from a place where you are working towards something and I see that you're capable. You need to do X, Y, Z in order to do it and do it well.
Yes.
Anything that isn't really translated in that matter or can't be translated in that matter, inapplicable.
Yeah.
I do agree. I think the idea of like talking or criticism with love is needed. I think that my mom kind of like instilled that in me just because of who and how she talks. Her professionalism and like public speaking is top tier. And I didn't realize that I was learning that from her until I got to Howard.
Yeah.
Because you realize
a lot
like,
of people don't know how to talk to people.
exactly. And you know how you address situations matter. No, but for real. And so like even the way that she used to like speak to my teachers when they would do something that was like disrespectful towards me because I'm the only Black person in the room. It's not a, oh, I'm gonna curse at you and tell you you're wrong. It's a, hey, let's sit down and talk about this. You did this and that wrong. We're going to work on fixing that. If we don't address it, we're going to go to a higher power and fix that too. It's like, you know, taking what your anger is and putting it in a professional manner so they can hear it because it matters. And like,
not just pointing the finger at them. My mom is a teacher, and if there's anything she has to be, it's patient. And the way that you were just talking just made me think a lot about that, because she's just so committed to being an unconditional figure to people, to the point where, yes, you're going to make mistakes, but I'm not going to point the finger at you. Let's figure out how we're going to not only move past this, but how are we going to make you a better person out of this?
Exactly.
Always, like, I think this could go for everything we've been talking about. How can you turn anything into something beautiful? And I think that that's ultimately what being a leader is. And I heard that, like, coming from your heart when talking about your mom.
Yes, I love my mom.
Love my mom.
No, but 100%. I think that, you know, criticism matters regardless if it's, you know, good or bad.
Right. We're not saying, you know, deuces to everybody who got an, you know, because people.
Everyone got an opinion.
Exactly.
You know, we can all be better versions of ourselves. But again, going back to like surrounding yourselves with people with intention who speak life into you, because me personally, my friends aren't going to have me walking around doing anything that is unintentional or just wrong, period.
Right.
So I can trust that the people around me are going to speak life into me and help me be a better version of myself. And that's why it's easy to cipher constructive feedback from people you don't need to be worried about.
Exactly. You need someone who's going to be able to like check you in a respectful manner, and understand, like they understand who you are as a person and that you're acting out of character. You know?
Shout out to all of our support systems.
Listen, love y'all. Okay, so that wraps up our episode Unapologetically Valuable.
Yay.
Thank you just so much to Girls Who Lead.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much, Her
having us.
Campus.
Oh my
We love
goodness.
working with you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching and tune into our next episode of Her Campus, Her Voice.
Yes,
Bye.
ma'am.